What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. I hope you guys had a wonderful weekend. A glorious weekend. I know I did. I know this weekend was some much needed rest and relaxation, and yet I still feel like I've only slept about 4 hours in 3 days. But I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're doing great. Let's catch up with the chat here before we get started. Man, people are piling in already. Great to see people in here. Mystical jumping in. I remember when my toaster attacked me, and then the blender joined in. We got to watch those home appliances, folks. Hopefully, Justin Trudeau comes to our aid and bans them outright. Assault appliances. We got to make sure nothing happens there. Suzanne jumping in. How are you, Suzanne? Nice to see you. Hope you had a great weekend. Timo jumping in. Where are you, Derek? Well, I'm at home. Good to see you. Snatch jumping in. I was attacked by a horny brunette today. Well, my condolences. Hopefully you had insurance and it was a nice attack. Well, CB, that's way too long for me to read, but yes, all of the words. Welcome in, everybody. I hope you guys are doing great. I know this weekend was crazy. There was a lot going on, and we're going to talk about that just while I let people get into the chat. I know with my weekend, we got out of town, and we went to good old Sylvan Lake, Alberta, which I'm telling you right now, if things don't work out with this city election, for this mayoral run, I think I may just pack up, sell the house, and move out to Sylvan Lake. Gorgeous, gorgeous beach town. I rented a Sea-Doo with my son and took him out on the lake for the weekend, and it was a lot of fun. We had a good time. My 7-year-old got to drive the Sea-Doo for the majority of the time and enjoyed it, and didn't realize that by pulling the throttle all the way and turning the vehicle at the same time that he'd throw me off the back of it while he was driving away. So it was good times. My wife wasn't angry in the least, and I say that as heavily sarcastic as I can, but it was a great time. Good to get out of town. Good to go to the lake. Could spend some time with my mother-in-law. A lot of people don't get along with their mother-in-laws, or they always, the old ball and chain with my mother-in-law. And I love my mother-in-law. We get along very well, and it's always good to catch up with her. And it's always good to catch up with her and kind of get a visit in, and especially while the weather's nice. It was a good time to be had by all. Pride emojis. Yes, CB. Thank you. I was attacked by a Sea-Doo this weekend. I was attacked by the water when I fell off the Sea-Doo. It was an angry protester who threw me off the Sea-Doo as I hit the water. What a crazy time. What a crazy time, ladies and gents. We should probably just jump right into it. We should just get into it. I'm just pulling up what I can find as because I've got Viva's tweets on here. Good old Viva. And I liked what he was tweeting out, so I really wanted to bring that into the stream and talk about Viva's tweets because he's done a good job monitoring what's going on here. Hold on. Oh, I got off it. Joel Harden, Ottawa MP, this weekend at a Pride. I guess you could call it a protest, anti-protest. He claimed that he had this little face injury from being attacked. So he said on his tweet, "I'll take a punch for queer and trans youth any day." Ottawa MPP punched in the face at rally supporting queer and trans youth. He was attacked. Says here on Yahoo News, attacked while attending rally, attempting to keep trans and queer kids, queer individuals safe. You see this tiny little scratch on his face, which, that doesn't, first off, if you're going to get attacked, hit properly. If you were in fact to get hit. And I remember saying that seems like an awfully tiny little mark to be attacked. Now the article goes on. Let's pull it up. Where Viva's Ottawa Centre MPP Joel Harden was assaulted by an anti-trans protester while attending a rally in support of queer and trans rights in Ottawa Friday morning. What has been thus found out, what we have found since then, is that he did in fact have his megaphone up to his face, which gave him the injury. So he scratched his own face and then took a photo saying that he was attacked, that, these terrible, terrible right-wing protesters that attacked me. Um, I mean, can you really trust the liberals these days? Can you trust anybody who wants to come out in support of this stuff? They just bend to their whims, and well, it's we'll get into it in a sec. I just want to get let's get caught up in the chat. Spudman jumping in. Spud, welcome into the stream. Viva went balls deep on this one. Well, I mean, when you got to go in, I guess. I was attacked by a can of cream corn, but used a can opener and threw it into a pot. Yeah, CB's always on top of that. Did Joel take acting lessons from Jussi Smollett? Probably. Harden will never get punched. You will never get punched in the face. Well, I don't know. Somebody might take a shot at him after this. I got a feeling somebody might take a shot at him after this just to show him what a punch actually is. What I find disgusting about the whole thing is that there were others that corroborated his story. And I'm going through a lot of his tweets because Viva's got them all over here. But what we've got, Jagmeet Singh, good old Jimmy McJuggernuggets virtue signaling on behalf of Joel Harden. I'm proud of you, Joel Harden. Queer and trans people and kids are being targeted by angry and hateful extremists. I love that word, extremists. Government must step up to protect queer and trans community. Still hasn't deleted that tweet, even though we found out it was a blatant lie, Jagmeet. So I'm curious as things get rolling in Parliament, where or if Jagmeet's going to put out something else, if he's going to go full on with this, even though it's been found that this is a blatant lie. Viva tweeting out here, dear Jagmeet Singh, NDP Ontario, it looks increasingly like a member of provincial parliament lied about being the victim of a hate crime at yesterday's protest. Will you be investigating this, or do you not care about liars within your political party? Which, yeah. So he's NDP. I thought he was liberal for some reason. I guess he's NDP. Now, what you can see here, I saw here it is right here. I saw my dear friend and MPP get punched in the face by haters today. When I say the bigots are getting emboldened, this is what I mean. So people are now making false statements. So that is actually a crime. If you report, I mean, we saw it with Jussi Smollett in Chicago when he said that he was attacked by a bunch of neo-Nazi and Trump supporters, and he filed false police reports. And it came back and bit him in the ass. And now, well, he was facing jail time, and then he cried like a little girl and was released. And I don't know where they're at with that. I know they were going back to court. But when it comes to this, when it comes to these claims, he should have to resign. He should have to resign for making those false statements, because this is the divisiveness that's being caused in the country right now. This is the problem in this country, is that people like this are stirring the pot on a regular basis by making these false claims and getting everybody all rallied up, trying to get them into a corner saying, oh, I back this or I support that, and shut up, we support everything else. You can't get ahead in the world when you're focused on all this negativity. And usually the reason they're doing it is to distract you from what's really going on in government, from all the sillinesses that's happening in government. But as you can see right here, I wanted to make sure that justice was done today. We wanted to make sure that the perpetrator of this crime has indeed been found out. So good old Sean Ricard over on Twitter, posting out that there's a $100,000 reward wanted in connection with a vicious and heinous attack on trans activist and MP Joel Harden. We want to make sure that we ban all assault megaphones immediately and bring this megaphone to justice. Somebody think of the children. I mean, let's just, come on, guys. We gotta think about the kids. This megaphone is a high risk offender, and we just can't have that. We can't have it going on in society. It's crazy. But as the weekend went on, this also took place. This good old Pride took place, which is absolutely disgusting. This is Pride. This is where I'm saying the divisiveness is being caused. People are touting that this is okay. This is okay for kids to go and see. This is okay for parents to take their children to. There's somebody abusing their children right there. There's more people abusing their kids, taking them to this nonsense. so they can virtue signal. Like, who thinks that's normal is my question. Pride used to be about, I guess, recognizing that people have their rights, that the gay community was allowed to marry, that the gay community was allowed to go out in public without being exploited or treated poorly, that they were human, the same as the rest of us. Now it's turned into a sex festival or a sex month where people can go out dressed like clowns and behave completely inappropriate. Like, I don't understand why anybody supports this and says it's acceptable. What gets me is these images of the children, these kids. It's child abuse. It's child abuse. Do you think this man jumping up and down like this really cares about being accepted, or do you think he's just seeking attention? More children. With police standing by, allowing all of this to go on, that there's nothing wrong. Nothing to see here, folks. Just good old-fashioned pride. Now, they've actually come out and said it's no longer a month. They're extending it to a season. So while our veterans only get 1 day a year, and Mother's Day, you know, moms get it 1 day, fathers get 1 day, these guys get a season. A season. I seen a really good tweet today by an American vet that spoke about Joe Biden standing up this weekend talking about the Pride Month and the Pride or the trans community, and they hoisted up the trans flag, the trans banner. I won't call it a flag. Flag represents a country. This is a banner. They raised a trans banner in Washington, and the veteran spoke very clearly and said, "We didn't fight for this. We didn't agree with this. This isn't what we went to war for. This isn't what we support. This virtue signaling, this touting, this brainwashing of children with the puberty blockers and the genital dismemberment. And it's hard to even talk about it. It's really hard to even talk about it because it's just so disgusting what they're doing to kids. I can't even. I can't. I just. Yikes. Yikes. Let's get back caught up with the chat. Spudman saying it must have attended one of Trudeau's drama classes. Hey, you know what? I'm willing to bet that Joel Harden may well have a degree from the Trudeau School of Acting. Oh, I thought he was talking about me. Harden will never get punched in the face because of this. Okay. Rob jumping into the stream. Rob, how you doing? What a loser. Absolutely. I'm sure someday someone will show him what it's like to get punched in the face. I'm willing to bet it's going to be very sooner than later. And he should be removed from politics. Absolutely. Because he's not only lied, but he's causing division and spreading lies. You can't sing a song with background without liars. There you go. Good old Snatch jumping in. James jumping into the stream. How you doing, James? NDP, MPP, Joel Harden has always been a known radical activist. See, this is the first I've heard of him. When I seen those photos, I'll be honest, Ben Bankus wears that jacket much better than Joel does. But it's crazy. At Clyde, do something. Word of the day. Ebullient? Ebullient? Am I reading that wrong? God, you guys, see, that's a problem. Clyde uses big words around me to confuse me, and I don't like it. I don't like what Clyde does. It's the ultimate cry wolf. Absolutely, Rob. Career day at the local strip club. Yes. And that's the problem. And I've said it a million times over that if you had women walking around stages dancing the way these guys are in scantily clad lingerie, getting tipped by children, the world would go nuts. People's heads would explode. They would literally explode on the spot. And people would say how inappropriate it is. A lot of what we just saw in that video is called indecent exposure, and there are laws for that. You go to jail. But because, so they had this in Montreal last week where they had a man derobed by cutting off his loincloth or whatever he was wearing in a box, in a transparent box, in front of parents and children, fully exposing himself to kids and saying, well, it's art because we're talking about constructs, and we're talking about how they're treated poorly in society and not accepted. You're naked. You're standing there completely buck-ass naked. Of course, nobody's going to take you seriously. Why should people be taking their children? It's the people who host the events I have the problems with. The people that allow these events, I have a problem with that. I have a problem with the people who think this is acceptable. But the people I have the problem with the most are the goddamn parents. Somebody needs to stop and tell them, you're not better than everybody else. Your virtue signal has failed. You're abusing your children. And your children should be taken away from you if you're going to expose them to that. I'll tell you right now, if my father would have taken me to a strip club when I was 10 years old, I probably would have been happy. But if he took me to a strip club at the age of 10, he'd have been arrested. And my mother would have never spoken to him again. Right? Like, why is this acceptable? Why are we allowing this? And why is there such a push for it is what I'm asking these days. Why? It's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. That's my thought too. The parents are to blame. Absolutely. Absolutely, Timo. Calgary City Council is demonic. The problem with Calgary City Council, and the problem that I've had, I've talked to the very few councillors that are more right-leaning. I'll say normal. The normal councillors. There's very few of them. And part of the reason they asked me to run and consider that now, I'll say it again for anybody who's missed past streams. When I first tweeted out, maybe I should run for mayor back in February, it was a joke. Because what I was basically saying was, I don't know how to run the city, but I probably could do a better job than Jody Gondek. So maybe I should run for mayor, and at least we'd have somebody competent who thinks on a normal level running the city. And instantly these counselors called and said, were you serious? And I said, no. No, I was just joking. And they said, could you be serious? We'd like somebody else to be on council. We'd like to have like-minded individuals, because these guys who think normal, these normal city councilors, continuously try to pass new bylaws, new regulations, new spending that's going to benefit the city, not virtue signal, not put people at risk, and they're outvoted. So the problem isn't just myself running for mayor. Me running for mayor gets another like-minded individual on city council. But we need more people running for council that are like-minded. So when I see people from Calgary that come in and that say, like Mike over at Freedom Honey, and says, well, I was going to run at one point, run for a city councilor. Let's get more people like-minded. I've spoken to my good friend Andy Lee about getting into the race for a city council job. I had my dear friend Tamara Leach at the house this last week before she headed out to Toronto to do some press for her new book, which, if you haven't picked up her book, Hold the Line, yet, pick it up. It's fantastic. It really speaks volumes as to what she had to put up with while she was incarcerated and horribly mistreated by the government following the Freedom Convoy. But I spoke with Tamara, and she talks multiple times about moving out this way from Medicine Hat. I told her, you should run for council too. And if we all got on council, some real shit would get done in this city. Rob jumping in. I guarantee you do a better job. Please get in there ASAP. I will do what I can as soon as I can. Jive Talker coming in. Welcome into the stream. Gondek's a woke joke. She's turning Calgary into a woke hellhole. The problem is people like Jody Gondek and Justin Trudeau, Rachel Notley, they're all poised to just rip and destroy everything that we hold sacred for some reason. They don't want anybody to benefit. It kind of reminds me of pre-French Revolution, when you had these monarchies that just smiled down on the people and said, well, you guys suffer while we have the lap of luxury. We'll tax you to death. We'll punish you. You'll work all day for next to nothing, and we'll take all the benefits. They're tearing our cities, our province, our country apart. They're dividing us on record levels, and they have no care in the world about what they're, because here's the thing, they get their pensions no matter what. So they'll leave. They'll abandon, like Jody Gondek won't live in Calgary when she's done being mayor. She'll leave. She'll go live somewhere nice and put her feet up. Because why would she live here? She's destroyed it. Same thing with Justin Trudeau. You think he's going to live in Canada when he's done being PM? Unless he moves to like Tofino or something, I don't see him staying in Canada when all this is done. Why does Tamara want to move away from the hat? Well, I think it's just because she's busy. And anytime she's got to get on a flight, she's got to drive into Calgary. And I think she's just wanting to get closer. She wants to move out into like the country near Calgary, I believe. Gondek's worse than Notley and Trudeau. Shane jumping in, let them eat cake. It feels like a let them eat cake society right now. Very much so. You'll own nothing and be happier for it. They keep saying that, but I don't see it. My good friend Clyde did a great video this week on the housing bubble. You guys should really go check that out if you haven't. Not only because Clyde deserves the views, but he does fantastic work. And he pointed out a good factor on the housing market, because a lot of people, anytime I talk to somebody about the housing market, they always say the same thing to me that Clyde mentions in his video. Well, if you compare housing in the 1980s, people were paying, high levels for their mortgages because interest rates spiked to 22, 23%. What people don't realize is that people were buying their houses at low levels. And once those interest rates went down from 23%, people could live again. The problem right now is that so I'll give you an example. When my wife and I bought our home back in 2015, we were told you can buy a house for $450,000, let's say. Now, that wasn't the number they gave us, but I'm just using it as an example. $450,000. You go and look, and the average house was $425,000, which means that when you're buying a house, you're stretched to your limit. Now, when you go to buy a home, I believe it's 30% of your income is allotted for your mortgage. That if you're anything over your debt ratio at 30%, they won't approve you for a home. So they looked at our debt ratio, which we had none, and said, based on your income, you can afford, we'll say $450,000 for a house. Average house is $425,000. So when the average person goes to buy a home, they're just scraping in to buy their house. They're just getting in under the wire. Because of inflation, because of the way things are, they're just getting in, which means that when interest rates go up even by half a point, all of a sudden they owe hundreds more a month when they re-sign their mortgages in 5 years, and they're stretched past their limits. They can't afford their houses. So you're going to see that across the country because we've gone up 4 points now. And I think we're at 4.75%? Which people say, well, that's still really low. Yeah, but people weren't buying $600,000, $700,000, $800,000, $1 million homes in 1980. There's a huge difference. And what you're going to see is that a lot of people were buying houses at historic highs in 2018. So now that it's 2023, the people who bought houses in 2018 were probably paying 3.25 on their interest rate. Now, if it's at 4.75 and they're going to re-sign their mortgage, let's say on a $600,000 home, they're going to owe about $1,200 to $1,500 extra a month from what they were paying the previous month, just because they have to re-sign the terms of their mortgage. So if anybody in this chat could tell me, in all honesty, if you all of a sudden, whether you rent or own, if your rent or your mortgage shot up tomorrow by $1,500 for the next 5 years, could you afford that? Could you afford an extra $1,500 on top of your already high bills? Absolutely not. The majority of people, no. I'd say the vast majority of people. So you're going to run into a situation, I think, later this year, early next year, where you're going to see people that just cannot afford to live. And as much as people tout, well, we have CMHC and we have Genworth and they back up the mortgages. They're an insurance company. I always say to people, well, imagine if 100,000 cars got into an accident tomorrow and we're all write-offs. And the insurance company was stuck holding the bag with all those vehicles. It's the same with the home market. They guarantee the mortgages. they can't afford billions and billions of dollars in foreclosed homes. They'll tank. The banks at the end of the day will be the ones stuck holding the bag. And you're going to see a mass foreclosure of homes. As much as I say, like my wife looked at a gorgeous house in Sylvan Lake over the weekend and said, if we sold our house, we could afford to move here. And I said, well, I've got the mayoral race coming up, but even if we could afford it and I didn't have that, I still would not buy a house right now. I would tell everybody, do not buy a home right now. Because not only are you going to get bent over and screwed, you're going to get a much better deal in the next 6 to 12 months, I would think. Now, I could be wrong. Something could happen in the economy where all of a sudden I'm eating my words. I hope it doesn't come to that. I would like to see houses, even as a homeowner myself, I'd love to see houses come down to a more affordable level for people. But interest rates got to come down. And we got to get this country back on track. Hoser jumping in, welcome into the stream. It's going to benefit the rich developers when the market tanks, probably by design. And that's true. We'll probably see a meltdown that puts 2008 to shame. Well, yeah. But it's going to happen in the U.S. as well because their interest rates have gone up. Inflation's gone up in the U.S. too. So we're going to see it. We're going to see it. Harry Ludwig jumping in. Harry, welcome into the stream. I built a house in 2000. You can't do that today. Most people know. No. I bought a repossessed house. People were losing their houses. The message is if rates go up, people will lose their houses. It's happened before. And that's why anybody who shuts it down and says, oh, that can't happen. I always refer them back to that video during the pandemic when that guy from Global News was interviewing Trudeau. And he asked, when you keep printing this money, what's going to happen when interest rates inevitably go up? And Trudeau looked at him and got mad and said, interest rates are at a historic lows, Glenn. And it's now look where we are, not even 3 years later. People who say this isn't going to happen in the housing market, take notes. It's coming. And it's not a matter of if, it's when. And it's going to hit hard. I got a feeling it's going to hit real hard. And a lot of people are going to be stuck holding the bag. And yeah, developers might benefit, but the average person who wants to buy a home could benefit too, because all of these houses that you see at $600,000 might go down to $330,000. Especially in Calgary. Now, while a lot of people have been buying homes in Calgary, there is a huge amount of people that bought homes in the early 2000s when the average price of a home was $250,000. So if houses go back down, they'll break even and people will be getting the deal of a lifetime getting into homes. Timo, houses were low in the 80s, but we bought them at $90,000 and they were worth $34,000 overnight. Tougher times in the 80s. Absolutely. But the 23% interest rates were temporary. They went down once people started defaulting on their mortgages and selling their houses for $1. I think those rates only stuck in for about 12 months. The problem is that when you re-sign your mortgage now, when you're already stretched to your max and you re-sign at an extra 1.5 points, you're signed into that for 5 years. I'm moving to a nicer, bigger house, basement suite for $1,000. Well, hey, good on you. Good on you. Rob, we need rent caps. Yeah. If interest rates go down, you think rents will follow? I really doubt it. Hard for me to care about homeowners who bought at the lowest rates in history. So, David, first off, welcome into the stream. It's hard to say because you've got people who bought houses back when they were expensive. Or more affordable, I should say, sorry. And then they became expensive, so they've raised the rates to compete and get their money bags while other people who have bought homes to rent them out are just making ends meet by paying the rent and the property taxes, or the mortgage, I should say. I don't know if they're going to go down. Because what you're going to see is that the mass amount of people that bought properties to rent them out, or say, for example, I bought this home in 2015 that I live in right now. So let's say a year ago when my books took off, I decided, hey, I'm going to buy a second house and rent this one out. I'd still owe a very high mortgage on this house. So if the rates went up and I couldn't make ends meet on both properties, I can't afford to lower the rate because it's a very high mortgage. Well, higher in comparison to what the average person who bought 20 years ago would be paying. So I couldn't sell the house to get my money back, and I also couldn't rent it out. So those people are going to be screwed too. Megan jumping in. How you doing, Megan? Welcome to the stream. Hope everyone's had a great weekend so far. I know I did, Megan. I hope you did as well. Wait and see what the energy costs. I can't agree more, Marty. Couldn't agree more. These idiots voted for it. But this is the problem. This is the same thing I talked about when we covered the NDP election in Alberta. Everybody's touting, oh, Rachel Notley, we trust. This is all about trust. Trust for what? The problem with these voters, and I've talked about this to great extent, the majority of people who vote for NDP or Liberal are people that are looking for handouts. They're looking for capitalism. They're looking for Marxism. They're looking for, I want to do less work and get money, free money from the government. I don't care if I sign my house and my car over to the country. I don't care if I own nothing and I'm happy. I just want free handouts. These are people that believe in communist style politics. And they don't understand how it actually works. Anybody who says that they agree with a universal basic income or they agree with these handouts, I always tell them, go to North Korea, go to Russia, take a look around and tell me that works. Tell me how that works out. People that are rationed out food and told that they can't feed their families because this is all they get for the week. They just want handouts. And that's why you're called an extremist. You're called far right. If you look at real economics and just say, guys, like I get it all the time. I'm always told, well, you're conservative. I'm not. I'm party neutral. I vote based on what's going to work for my lifestyle. But my views come across as very conservative simply because I look at economics. I look at the basic principles of life and say, if you want anything good in life, you got to work for it. You got to earn it. You got to pay your debts and you got to pay them responsibly and you have to spend responsibly. I can't push that enough. How many times in my house that somebody has, like my wife said, oh, I'd like to get hardwood floors. Hey, I'd like to do that too. But it's not an option. We just don't have the money. Well, we have a line of credit, but we're not going to use it for that. Those are for emergencies, right? You have to be responsible. If I come home with 3 new arcade machines, my wife's going to say the same thing as the hardwood floors. What the fuck were you thinking? And I'm going to have to say, oh, I'm sorry. I thought this was a good idea. I just thought I'd run outside and spend thousands of dollars. Like, that's the problem, is that a lot of people don't think about basic economics when they're talking about how things are voted on and how policy is pushed through and what's good for this country. They tout and tout and tout because they think with people like Justin Trudeau or with any of these other people that, hey, we're going to get the best deal on the planet. We're going to get all these free benefits. You know, we're not going to have to pay for dental work. You're taxed on other avenues. Where do you think the money comes from for that? Look at Austrian School for Economics. Yeah. Digital ID and hokey pokey passports for the whole world. Yeah, I did a video on that Thursday. It's scary. It's very scary. Shane, welcome into the stream. I'm an Albertan tradesman. I build houses for people who would hate me. Well, I mean, people would hate you just for working for a living, right? It's Kenya started debt economics. Yes. Yeah. Or because of my politics, Shane says. Look, politics is like my old man on my wedding day, he told me, I'm going to give you some advice. And I've mentioned it before on the channel. He said, there's 3 arguments in life you're never going to win: religion, politics, and everything else. And when it comes now, this is very smart advice, because politics, people never used to talk about politics. Talking about politics was considered inappropriate and rude 30 years ago. Nobody discussed who they vote for. Nobody discussed what they believe in. With the rollout of social media, And I was talking about this the other night on Clyde's Discord, and people said, well, it's not, you can't blame the internet. What I blame of the internet is that when you look at social media on a whole, it's given people these digital soapboxes to say things that they wouldn't say in public and hide behind their monitors. We've all done it. We're all guilty of it. I'm guilty of it. Where we can basically say how we feel, what we think, and we don't care who we offend because they're virtual people. We don't know them personally. So you've developed and enriched this society of people who now talk about politics on the regular. And I believe that there is a place to discuss politics. I think whether you agree or disagree with somebody, discussing politics can be a healthy discussion because it helps balance the state of our country. It keeps people interested and involved. And it shows that, hey, sometimes I've thought something about a political party and then somebody tells me a reality check, and then all of a sudden it's, oh, I didn't know that. So you can learn things from people if you're willing to listen. But the problem is that there's a lot of people out there that don't want to listen. So, I mean, whenever somebody talks politics with me, I mean, my hot tub guy I seen over the weekend, he talks politics, and sometimes him and I don't agree, but we have the kind of conversations that I can hear what he wants to say and he hears what I say, and we just chuckle it off and say we agree to disagree sometimes while we agree on other things as well. So it's important when you have those discussions to know if you're going to talk about politics, you got to be prepared for somebody to say, I don't agree with it. I made a huge mistake when I was out at Sylvan Lake on the weekend because my mother-in-law asked about our new book that's coming out in the fall and said, when are you going to do one about Donald Trump? And I said, I'm not going to do one about Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump. And like 10 people turned around and instantly got disgusted with me on this beach. And it's like, hey, I'm allowed to like the guy. I'm sorry. I like his style. I followed him long before he ran for president when he was a business mogul. I wrote my business report on him based on The Art of the Deal. I think he's very smart when it comes to a lot of things that he does in the business world. I also think he's very stupid with a lot of things he's done in the business world and his online presence. But I don't mind Donald Trump. And I'm not afraid to say that. There are going to be people that disagree with me, and that's okay. But it's when you disagree with somebody and you say, oh, you should drop dead, or I hate you. I don't agree with that. Marty says the left won't debate. Well, they don't. And the problem, anytime somebody doesn't want to debate things, it usually, now it could just be because they're uncomfortable talking politics, but the majority of the time I find it's because whatever point they have, they're either not fully educated in or they're wrong and they know they're wrong. So they don't want to waste their time. Shane says Sylvan's the fake California. The problem with Sylvan Lake, it's pretty based, actually. Sylvan's pretty based. The problem with Sylvan is that the good months out of the year, the months where there's no snow on the ground, it's full of tourists. The tourists are the ones that are the fake California. That's Mystical nails it. They love Trump until he ran Republican. Absolutely. I bet Derek can out-eat Donald Trump at Hot Wings. Probably not. Probably not. I'm sure Trump could take me in that. Canada and U.S. have horrible leadership right now. Yeah. I mean, regardless of where our country lands, the U.S. needs to get rid of Biden as well. He's not even cognate. He can't stand. He fell 2 weeks ago during a speech. Like, the guy can't even stand. Get him out of there. He's old. He's got dementia. Like, he's basically just there to have a label over him while other people call the shots. And they're destroying the U.S. Trump is great. Keep speaking freely no matter who gets pissy. That's fine. And Harry says it too. Trump has his faults. He does have his faults. And I'm willing to admit that. Everybody has their faults. I have my faults. There's times I say things and people are like, dude, you're way off. And it's like, okay, fine. And I've admitted when I'm wrong. I'm human, just like the rest of everybody else. We all make mistakes. None of us are perfect. Some of us are closer than others, but nobody's perfect. And I think it's important. I think it's important to recognize that. And I think I think, see what Harry said there about Trump having his faults. I like that. I like that in a conversation, because that opens a dialect to have a reasonable conversation and say, what do you think some of those faults are? And you can go back and forth without having a screaming match. And that's when you can have a realistic conversation about politics. I thought David Johnston looked as old as Biden, tripping on his speech, and he stepped down this week, which I'm surprised it took this long for David Johnston to step down. The special rapporteur to Trudeau. I thought surely with the amount of pressure he was getting, he was either going to ride it all the way out, or he would have stepped down earlier. There's no saving what's going to happen from him stepping down. All that's going to happen is he's going to be hassled a lot less than he was before. That's it. Ned says Johnston had Alzheimer's eyes. Yeah. Yeah. Mystical says he's a platypus. We're a flawless species. Guys, we have to be tolerant of our platypus friends. Should they add that to the trans flag? Maybe like a platypus, like a little duckbill? Since there's infinite genders, we'll add that. We'll find it. Mystical, I will make sure that the first thing I do as mayor of Calgary is acknowledge platypus people. Thank you for coming out and explaining that on the channel. I appreciate that. There are 5 federal by-elections in 2023, 4 on June 19th, 1 here in Calgary Heritage Riding. Is the Calgary Heritage Riding by-election on your radar screen? It is to a sense, but the problem is that what I've seen in Alberta, what I've seen in Calgary, what I've seen between the US and politics in general now, there's a lot of sabotage that goes on in these things. And I wait for major elections. The bylaw ones, you only get a handful of people voting in those, where the majority of voters will come when it's time to decide somebody that really influences and really pushes for change in their lifestyle. A by-election may or may not do that, and you find less engagement. I personally don't pay attention to those as much. It's the major ones that I do, and maybe I'm wrong for doing that, but who knows? We'll see. I do keep my eyes on it, but I don't get as heavily involved as I do with regular politics, I should say. But it'll be interesting to see, because Calgary Elbow was a riding that was under attack, we'll say, politically for a while, because it was open. Now, keep in mind, Calgary Elbow was Ralph Klein's old riding. And I was speaking with my good friend Diana Hart over the weekend, and she's a wonderful person. She's written some amazing books. If you don't know Diana Hart, she's the widow of the British Bulldog Davy Boy Smith, and sister of WWF champion Bret Hart. And she's an amazing person. She's one of the nicest people I've probably had the pleasure of meeting in the last year. And her son Harry, who wrestles, is the spitting image of his father. I've seen him in the ring, and I mean, Davy Boy Smith had his issues with substance abuse, which ultimately I believe led to his demise. But Harry, when I say he's a spitting image of his father, I'm talking talent. The man knows how to wrestle, and if you put him in some Union Jack shorts, he'd look just like his old man, and the good parts of his old man. And but I was talking to Diana, and she says that in the Calgary Elbow riding, a lot of people are being scrutinized in that area, being called what was it, champagne socialists or something like that. Let me see if I can pull up exactly what she said. Because she used the term and said that if you're not voting for the NDP, they call you champagne socialists. And she said it's rough in that neighborhood in terms of politics, because you have people that have moved in. Now, this is a more wealthier part of Calgary Elbow. And you've got people that have moved from places like Vancouver, Toronto, moguls were like business moguls or very wealthy people that have moved from very left leaning cities, which is why you're seeing those ridings start to turn, is that they're buying these large homes, settling in Calgary, and ultimately changing the votes. They're changing the landscape of votes. I shouldn't say changing the votes in terms of sabotage. They're changing the way Calgary is voting because they have influence and they come here with those views and bring them from wherever they've moved from. And it's sad. It's sad because you've got people that are real diehards to this city, like Diana, who's lived here her whole life, and she loves this city, and she's watching her community kind of fall apart in the political landscape because they're touting this virtue signaling policies of well, we should do drag story hours, and we should let our children be involved in sexual acts, and we should, like all these backwards policies that are being pushed. Let's tax businesses. I was talking with my hot tub guy over the weekend and said, how would things have worked out for you as a small business owner had Rachel Notley have won that election last month? And he says, I'd be out of business. He says, I've only got 3 staff members. He says, I've got a guy who runs my shop, I've got myself, and I've got my other technician. He says, I'd have to go down to being a single business owner, and I couldn't manage, keeping inventory and doing service. And it's not a matter of not being busy. It's the fact that we'd be paying significantly more. People wouldn't want to pay a higher rate for our services, and I'd be paying more in taxes. I'd have to go. And a lot of businesses would have suffered as a result. Small business, people think it's big business that keeps this province afloat. It's small businesses because they're the ones contributing the most in terms of the taxes. These large businesses, they have so many loopholes to avoid taxation, while the smaller guys are paying hand over fist in taxes. Now, Alberta, they do get breaks. As a business owner myself, I'll admit I was a little shocked when I did my taxes because while they were high, they weren't as high as I thought they were going to be because of some of the breaks that we get in Alberta. But had Rachel Notley have raised those rates, people would have been in trouble. And I just can't understand why anybody would support these ideologies of tax everyone more and get nothing in return for it. I keep seeing people bitching about this arena deal in Calgary, and it's most of them are from Edmonton, and it's like, well, you already got your arena, so why are you complaining because we're getting ours? I, as a taxpayer, and it's a very controversial issue in Calgary, but as a taxpayer, I'm happy to see a new arena come in, and I don't care if my taxes go up as a result of it, so long as that's where the money's going, because it benefits the city. It brings in business to our bar and restaurant industry. It brings in better concert venues, which gets people supporting things and out and spending money. It brings money into the city because it's not just, this arena that takes all the money and runs. They have to pay taxes too. So it's a huge benefit if we keep our hockey teams and our events. I'd much rather see an arena go through than artwork around the city. People forget often that Naheed Nenshit, when he was the mayor, put in a bid to host the Olympics that cost the city over $20 million. And he backed out at the last second. Calgary actually stood a very good chance of winning that bid for the Olympic Games. But he started all these think tanks and he started all of these independent research groups and groups to organize the bid itself and get all the reports ready and the studies ready and map out the costs. He did all the work and then backed out at the 11th hour. He backed out and says, I just changed my mind. It's just not going to be in our budget. While we were debating a new arena. And guess who got stuck with the price tag of those $20 million? Us. For nothing. For nothing. So when people complain about an arena, I say, get bent. Because at least we're getting something for our taxes. At least we're getting something. Virtue signaling is the worst forms of being discontinuous and phony. Absolutely. Harry says, I'm against the arena and pro sports. That's fine. And people, like, you don't have to support those things, even if you're against the arena and pro sports, but you should be happy for the businesses that are going to stay open as a result. The money that's going to come into the city as a result. That's a benefit. Even if you don't support sports, if you're never going to go to the arena, it's keeping our city alive. I lived in Winnipeg before I lived in Calgary. I watched what happened when we lost the Jets. We didn't just lose an NHL team. We lost businesses. We lost venues. We lost tourism. A lot of things went out the window when the Jets left. I see where money gets wasted in this town amongst other towns. And I just look at the arena deal and say, I don't see how that's a loss for anyone. If you're pro economy, if you're pro business, and I'm not saying, Harry, that you're wrong. I'm not. So don't take this as me saying you're wrong. You should change your opinion. You're allowed to have your opinion. I can respect your opinion because there are people who don't agree with it, and that's fine. But I just think that in comparison to other money that's been wasted, like that stupid Olympic bid, like the big blue ring that's in the city, like the stone masonry offensive artwork that's by Canada Olympic Park that actually insulted the Indigenous rather than virtue signaled to them. I just feel like the money's going to a spot where it's at least going to be put to use instead of thrown out the window and wasted. That's the way I see it. It's we need concerts too. It's not just about sports. We do, but again, that's revenue for the city, right? What you think about, like, the Calgary Stampede, and a lot of people tell me, "Oh, the Stampede sucks." And look, I'm on board to say that sometimes because I'll go to the Stampede sometimes, like, because I have younger kids and they drive by and get excited. Usually, if we're going to go to Stampede, we'll do sneak a peek because it's cheaper, and the kids can go and do a few things, and then we go home. They play a few games, and we go home. We don't do the rodeos. We don't do any of that stuff. But if you've been once, you've been every year. So before we had children, my wife and I used to go maybe every second year, and we'd just go down to the beer gardens, have a few drinks, have a laugh, and go home. But the Calgary Stampede, in terms of revenue, generates over 40% of what Calgary brings in its estimated GDP. When you look at the restaurant growth, the bar scene growth, and their GDP, as well as the city in terms of what it rakes in from the tourism. So if we didn't get another arena, what would happen to the Calgary Stampede? Would the Stampede start saying, well, we're still do the Stampede, but it's not going to be as big of a venue because we don't have as much to draw people in? Usually during Stampede, they have a lot of concerts going on. They'll bring some big names. I know a few years ago, Garth Brooks was here. It's usually a Western act. Kiss was supposed to come one year of the Stampede, and then COVID hit. We've had wrestling, like WWE, come to town during Stampede, big venues, because they know that the tourism's up and there's a lot going on. So if we didn't get a new arena, you'd start to see that crumble too, which means less revenue coming into the city. And again, I'm not saying that people are wrong for having the opinion. I'm just talking about basic economics that keep the city afloat, that contribute to our paved roads, that contribute to a lot of services in our city that we'd have to struggle to find a way to pay for them without the Calgary Stampede and without a lot of things. Monster Jam. Listen, I haven't heard of Monster Jam coming in a while, but if Monster Jam came, I would go. I've never been to one. I really want to go to one of those. Is that not the responsibility of the city? In what sense? To pay for the arena? I mean, or are you talking about to keep the roads going a certain way? The city has to bring in revenue, whether they tax businesses, whether they raise property taxes, whether they take the taxes from businesses that are bringing in business as federal or a provincial income. The city has to find a way to pay for things. And if those concerts coming to town is going to bring people from outside of Calgary into the city that say, hey, we're going to a concert, but we're going to go get dinner before we go. We'll go to the concert. And then afterwards, maybe we'll hit 17th Avenue and grab a beer or 2 or 5. And then we go back to our hotel. That's all money being spent within the city. That's benefiting business, benefiting the city. So yes, the city should be responsible for that because it's revenue they're taking in. It's easy to say it when you don't support it, when you don't. And again, I'm not saying anybody's wrong for having that opinion, but it's like if you, let's say you like something other than sports. Let's say you like I don't know. Say we had like a big beer fest here every year, and that was like your jam. And you said, I'm really into this beer fest. I'm really into everything that's going on. And they just said, you know what? Brings in a lot of money to the city, and we're going to shut it down. We're not going to do it anymore because we don't want to tax the people to keep this venue going that, you know, is very profitable for us. Even if I didn't go to that thing, you got to look at the economics of it and say, fiscally, it makes sense. If that's where our money is coming from, it makes sense. As a taxpayer, no city has the responsibility to bring in revenue. Well, that's kind of a it's a city needs, if you've got no revenue coming into your city, it's a circle. It's a circle of production. It's a circle of prosperity. If you have no revenue coming into your city, if you've got no jobs, if you've got no production, if you've got nothing to draw people to come to your city, then you're not building homes. And if you're not building homes, nobody's living here, nobody's moving here. If nobody's moving here, you can't grow as a city. Like it all, one thing affects the other. You can't tax people for roads. You can't tax people for improvements to the city if they don't have a reason to live here. Calgary, when you compare Calgary to other cities in the country, and I'm not saying this because I've got my head up my butt when it comes to Calgary. I think that when I've been to other cities, and I've been to, like, Vancouver's gorgeous in terms of the scenery, in terms of the way it looks. If you stand up on North Van and look down on the city, it's beautiful. But Calgary is probably one of the best organized, cleanest cities that I've been to in Canada. And I say that in the most non-smarmy way possible, I guess, because it's you have to come here. Like Clyde came here in the wintertime from Vancouver, well, from BC, and he said, I can't wait to see it in the summer. Like he said, it's not what I thought it was. And it's a different, like, we have all the reasons in the world for people to be here, and we need to continue to have those reasons. And I think Calgary is a wonderful place. And it's part of the reason I'm running for mayor. Because what's happening to this city with people like Jody Gondek, I mean, she doesn't want the arena. Rachel Notley said she was going to scrap the arena, which should tell you the benefits that arena is going to bring. Because they're tearing down everything that's going to benefit this city, that's going to give us prosperity. I want this city to go back to the way it used to be when I first moved here. I want to get rid of the crime. I want to get rid of the gangs. Jody Gondek was, where is it? She was on the C train this week. She was on the C train this week. Good old Jody Gondek. She wanted to make sure that she had the ability to virtue signal. I just want to check the photos here. Keep in mind, this is a mayor who said to defund the police. Now, they don't have the photo on this tweet from one of my more favored counselors, Dan McLean. But let's take a look at it regardless. So you've got Jody Gondek here standing on the C train. Now, what the photo doesn't show, here we go. Calgary man calls BS on City's Hall Good News C train safety tour. Jody Gondek, of course, the police aren't standing next to her while she's on this train ride. But she had 4 armed police officers with her while she's riding at 11 a.m. on Thursday. She wanted to show that she can ride the C train and be safe. Well, it's easy to be safe when you have 4 armed police officers standing next to you, protecting you, while you spit on the people who ride that train every day and feel threatened. My wife was telling me how much of a joke it is because all the police officers who were at the stations, they're gone. And I said it to her back when this happened in April, when Danielle Smith stepped in and brought police into the city to do Jody Gondek's job for her. I said to my wife, it's all smoke and mirrors. It's just to make people think that everything's safe. And I said, by summer, they'll be gone. And sure enough, here we are in June, no police there anymore. There's nobody watching the stations. There's nobody giving out tickets. There's nobody getting rid of this riffraff off the trains. Dan McLean asks, what do we need at these stations? I'll tell you what we need. We need turnstiles that you can't get into those stations unless you pay. The free fare zones, have your free fare zones downtown, but the end stations, the end of the line stations, should have turnstiles. And if you're caught on the train without fare, it should be more than just a ticket. If people had to pay to be on the platforms, you'd have less crime. I think that you need to have the stations be indoors. So the stations should have buildings around them with lockable doors and security. Whether you have security, transit police, or actual police officers, every single station should have one at least police, security, or transit authorities that are there so that if there's a problem on the train, there's always somebody at the next stop. Because the problem right now is that let's say Joe Blow gets on the train and causes an uproar and punches a lady in the mouth. Well, somebody can hit the emergency button on the train, but by the time they get to the next stop, the person gets off the train and runs away. And there's nobody there to arrest them. There's nobody to charge them. And the crime just continues. This can happen when people get stabbed, when people get, their heads smashed through a window, whatever you want to call it. There's nobody there in time to respond. So you need people of authority at every single station, not temporarily. The train also doesn't run 24 hours a day. The train runs from, I believe it's about 5 a.m. to midnight. So you should have somebody there, multiple shifts throughout the entire operating time. And when the train isn't running, the doors are shuttered and locked. And people cannot get in there. You wouldn't need the heated shelters that are next to the stations that people shoot up in and camp out in during the wintertime. You need to be able to be hard on this and say, we got to clean up these streets. I've talked about this when it comes to cities like Vancouver that are legalizing harder drugs. Look at Hastings. How's that working out for them? There are addicts out there. When you look at a city, there's places in I believe it's Norway where there are no homeless. And the reason there's no homeless is because they put them in government built buildings, like apartment buildings. They give them an apartment. They get them off the streets. They give them the building blocks to be a part of functioning society and get the help they need. So in these apartment blocks, they have counselors that are readily available to help them with their addictions, to get them back off things. They still live in those apartments and do their drugs, but the difference, they're not on the streets doing it. They're in these funded apartments where they're supervised and where there's medical staff available, there's counselors available, and they're encouraged to get work to do better. It's a reward system that goes, usually the fundamentals and the way things work. Like if you go to a halfway house or you go to somewhere in Calgary like the Mustard Seed, you're offered a shelter, but it's, well, if you get clean, then you work your way up the ladder to get to this next step. And then eventually the final step involves getting you into your own space, where they have found in other places that if you get people into their space right off the bat, even if they're still doing what they're addicted to or anything else, they're not harassing people. There's no violent crime. There's no hate crime. There's no, like, do you get what I'm saying with this? Like it almost sounds too good to be true, but it's been proven to work, because these folks who are ultimately left with nothing have the ability to better themselves and get the help that they need rather than stay addicted and on the streets. And the reason it works, and a lot of people say, well, do you know how much that costs? Do you know how much it would cost to put the personnel in those buildings? Do you know how much it costs to have those buildings available and run those buildings and the utilities for those buildings and the programs? Fundamentally, it costs a lot less than it does to have police officers on the streets. It costs less than to have the EMTs and everybody involved in every little problem that goes on, the graffiti work that goes on, the vandalism that goes on that has to be replaced. They actually save money. And once these individuals are working, they pay a rent to these buildings, which ultimately goes back to the cities. It's a really good program the way it works. I seen a really good video on it. In fact, I may do a video on it and link the video that I watched on how this works. Because it's astonishing, because like I'm the same. I watched it and said, yeah, right. Bullshit. That couldn't work. And they literally, so they talked about Japan and how Japan has, they're touting no crime and no homelessness, but it's debatable. Whereas they said in this town, I think it's either Norway or like Finland or something, where they do this. It's an experimental program. And they said that it's been proven to actually have zero. They have zero homelessness and very little unemployment as a result. But it's also the amount of citizens that are in that city versus somewhere like Calgary or Vancouver or wherever. It's, I don't know. I can see in the chat, I know a lot of people think it's terrible and it wouldn't work, but I'm telling you, like, maybe I'll do a video and I'll link this other video and we'll talk about it. Or maybe next week's stream we'll talk about it. I'm not saying that's going to work here. And the question in the video is if it works, then why isn't everybody doing it in every city? So those do raise reasonable questions. Do I think it's the be all end all answer? No, but it looks like a stepping stone to the beginning to addressing the answer. And I think that part of the problem when it comes to homelessness on the streets right now, part of the problem, first off, legalizing harder drugs does nothing more than create a bigger problem. They have a dependency on those drugs. And if you're going to keep feeding them, you're basically saying, go kill yourself. And people always argue with me, well, we have safe consumption sites. I don't give a shit if they're watched by 25 professionals while they shoot up. You're enabling it. You're enabling their addictions. You're not encouraging them or giving them the building blocks for a better life. These people don't need to be mistreated. Some of them need to be locked up. Some of these people are actual criminals. They need to be locked up. But there is a majority of these people that are on the streets because of addictions that really just need some professional help. And if they had access to that help, even if you could save a handful of people, I think it's worth it. Now, I'll kind of speak on where I relate to that. I've been looking for a reasonably affordable therapist through my Alberta Health since my mother passed to battle depression, my anxiety. And I've been on the waiting list for a year and a half since I raised my hand and said, I need to speak to somebody, but I don't want to pay $300 an hour to talk to a professional. I just got a call last week saying that I can go in August to see somebody for my first appointment after a year and a half. So if I was an addict and said, look, I'm sick of being addicted to heroin, I need some help, and I don't live anywhere, I'm homeless, I've got problems, like, what do you do? How do you get by when there's no resources, when there's no way to fix your problems? I don't have the answers. I don't have all the answers, but I do agree that, especially in Calgary, whatever the answer is, it needs to be found when it comes to the homeless problem, when it comes to the gang problems. I believe the guy's name in Calgary that they used to have a problem with, I think his name was Jesse Tran. I know his last name was Tran. And he ran one of the largest Asian gangs in Calgary that gave the police a hard time. That a lot of the guns coming into the city were a result of this guy. And he was in and out of the court system and then let go. Eventually his assets were seized. And eventually I believe he was deported because they just finally had enough of him. And they said, get out of here. That's it. It's done. If you've ever heard of the Balsa restaurant shooting that happened New Year's Day in Calgary, that was a result of people connected to him, where an entire restaurant got shut up. Innocent people died. It was terrible. Absolutely terrible. I believe that was around 2012 that happened. Now, the city, again, flip-flopped on so many things, saying, well, he's an immigrant, he has rights, he has this, he's that. We need to be harder on these people and say, get out. If you're not going to follow the rules, get the hell out. We need to push the province to have tougher rules when it comes to crime in relation to Justin Trudeau's catch and release policies. I don't agree with those. So whatever the solution is, whether it's what I was just talking about in Finland or whether it's harder laws, we need to find a solution, and we got to find it fast. But ultimately in this town and every other town in Calgary, people need to feel safe, especially people who are paying their taxes and working for a living and doing their due diligence, functioning in a society. People have to be able to pay their bills and feel safe when they go outside, when they walk out their door. We talked about it on the last stream, and I talked about it with my wife again over the weekend, where when I was growing up as a kid, we went out on our bikes and we were just told to come in when the lights go on. And we were trusted. And I trust my children. But there's no way in hell I'd let my kids go and do that today in today's world, because it's not the same. It's a different place. This says you got to be cruel to be kind. I don't think you have to be cruel, but what you need is order. You need order. And whatever you're going to do, you got to stick to it. You can't flip-flop and have loopholes and say, well, we just want to cut slack here or do that. No, it's all or nothing. It's hard because the problem right now is that we have a federal government that wants this country to burn. I'm very grateful that we have people like Danielle Smith, who, even if you look at what she did this week, she's assigning out of province inspectors to come look into the 175 fires in our province that, well, let's be honest, they're arson. But she's going to come look at it. She's going to send a private out of province party to come in and investigate, because she doesn't want anything tied to the government. She doesn't want anything tied to us. She doesn't want any conflicts of interest. We're going to assign people to come in and investigate this because we need answers. She's the only premier that's done it. There was a video that came out this week in Nova Scotia where the province has gone up in flames, and you have retired specialists that worked in firefighting that have contacted the province and said, We have a group of over 100 retired firefighters that are prepared to come and help with the forest fires, because the premier of Nova Scotia is saying we're understaffed, we're underutilized, we don't have people to fight these fires, and they're saying we'll come and help. And they were told no thank you. So what does that tell you about the government? They don't want to fix the problem. So I'm grateful for premiers like Danielle Smith who say, I'm going to at least do something. I'm going to look into this. I'm going to figure out what's going on. Because they say that the fires in Alberta, if you put them all together, accumulate to the size of burnt land right now that could house the entire country of Belgium. That's crazy. So Justin's a retired firefighter. Can't do it because of insurance. Fair enough. But this guy was saying that he's not asking to go in. He's not going in to fight the fires physically, but he was organizing teams. He was in charge of organizing this kind of fire. He was talking about the different types of forestry in this video that he posted on TikTok, because he's gone to the media and put out his story, and the province came back and said, we'll put you on a list. Well, thank you for coming out. It was basically a nice way of shoving them off. But he says there's different types of trees out there, and there's dealing with this type versus this type, and what they need to battle them is this equipment versus that equipment. And he wanted to help organize and bring in resources to get those things done through people he's worked with over the years. And they still said no. Now, if insurance is the issue, fine, but maybe they need to amend the insurance policies then to get something dealt with. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, something needs to give. Because if all of our leaders are going to sit back on their laurels and just say, well, it's just out of control, there's nothing we can do, how does that benefit us? All it's doing with these fires right now is giving people powers. It's climate change. It's climate change. I understand it's dry season. I'm not stupid. I get how fires work. And there are fires every single year. But you're going to tell me that 3/4 of the country on beautiful sunny days just go up in a blaze all at the same time? And it's climate change? Give me a break. Come on. That's federal again. I get it, but that's where I'm saying the pressure needs to be on them to change this shit. And I don't think we're going to get that from Poilievre. Poilievre, as much as I've touted how much I think he's capable to be our next prime minister, I'm having a real problem with it, because every time he's taking a press conference, he's more interested in pleasing everybody and hearing and saying what everybody wants to hear than standing his ground and talking actual policy. And that's fucking scary. That's really scary, because he's more worried about his polls than his policies. And that's going to be the difference when I run in the municipal in Calgary. I'm not worried about polls. I got nothing to lose. I don't give a shit if people don't like me. I'm going to speak my truth. And if people don't like it, don't vote for me. But you can't tiptoe around issues and pretend, oh, I know what my feelings are on them, but I'm not going to talk about them because, I don't want to upset people. If Poilievre was the prime minister right now and you had people going there, same thing with the insurance and the federal issue, they'd dance around it and get it caught up in red tape. You need people that are prepared to do actions, that are prepared to get to actual work and fix the problem and say, we're not going to put up with this anymore. These people that have been caught with the arson, they should be. There was. I posted on Twitter this week somebody in Saskatchewan who's got 4 counts of arson and was charged with mischief. Do you know who else was charged with mischief? Tamara Leach. Tamara Leach was charged with mischief. This person's got no criminal record and was let go on 4 counts of mischief, while Tamara Leach is stuck with 1 count of inciting mischief, and she's not allowed to have a social media account. She's not allowed to talk to people in the media, because heaven forbid she talked negative about Captain Fancy Socks. This is where our country is screwed beyond recognition. These people starting fires are let off the hook. Well, it's just mischief. Is it? You're burning half the country down. Go to jail for the rest of your bloody life. If you become mayor, how will you deal with the city unions? Look, I'll try to work with them as best as I can. But when it comes to the politics, it's if you're not going to go to work for the people that you're representing, get the fuck out. The problem with unions is they hold everything up in red tape. I've said it before. I'm sure there's laws and there's rules around things, and I'd have to look into it. But even when it comes to the city workers, like construction season in this town is the worst. But you've got guys who go out for an 8-hour workday and they probably only get real work done 3 to 4 of those hours out of the 8 that they're there because of all this unionized shit. And I'm going to be honest, I'm going to look at the length of these projects and I'm going to start saying, how long does it take to pave a road? If they say, well, by our watch, it takes, 4 months. I'm going to say you should be able to get it done according to these other people. Now I'll consult with other people. And if they tell me it should be able to be done in 2 months, I'll start telling the city, do it in 2 months. And if you can't finish it, I'll start bringing in somebody else to do it. And we'll fire some of the staff. I'll contract the work out to people who actually want to go and do real work. Not this pussyfooting around and sucking up taxpayer money. I don't agree with it. If we can save money by hiring other companies and getting it done faster, yeah, I'm all for it. They did it with the ring road. They hired private companies for the ring road and they got it done on time. There's so much waste when it comes to unions, when it comes to workers, when it comes to a lot of things. I'm not blaming the people who work for these unions, who work a job that has a union attached to it, because those people are just trying to earn a living. It's the union reps that are more worried about filling their own pockets and causing shit than actually getting the job done. They don't have the employees' best interests at heart. They have their interests at heart. Helen's got it here. Trump got rid of the red tape and even made his own skating rink in New York. And a quarter of the time. Yeah. Yeah. David says, I work for a city. 100% of our construction is contracted. We don't even make our own sidewalks. Must be different in Calgary. So Calgary's got city roadworks. And my understanding is I had a cousin who used to work in roadworks. And he told me, he says they have a lot of what they call safety meetings where they just stand around because they'll be doing the work. And then even something like, let's say a sidewalk, they'll be doing some work. And then someone will say, oh, there's an intersecting pipe here or something. They'll have to call in a supervisor. And the supervisor's on another job across the other side of town. And they got to wait for his clearance on things. So he's got to come all the way down to the other side of town, sign off on something. So that's 2 hours of these guys standing around not doing anything while they've got pylons all over the roads and people are getting ticketed double fines for speeding through the areas and stuff. It's ridiculous. What I'm talking about is if you're going to run into things like that, you should have somebody on site. And if you don't have somebody on site, they should be able to get there within a reasonable time frame. And if they can't, we'll find people who can, who are prepared to work for the city, charge a reasonable rate, and get the job done. These guys who say, well, I have my rights because of my union. Fuck your rights. We don't care. We just want it done and reasonably fast. The other thing I don't agree with, speaking of speeding in zones, I don't agree with when nobody's working on the weekend and they still have the signs up, for 8 months saying if you go through this construction site speeding, you get a fine. If there's nobody working, those shouldn't be in effect. Regular speed limit should be in effect. Plain and simple. I'd love it if I could fix that. If I could change that. No more free money for police to just sit there and rake in the bank on people speeding. I agree in safety when people are working. If people are on site, if there's construction going on, yeah, slow down. Keep people safe. But if nobody's working, no, you should be allowed to just continue on your way. No issues. I hate that shit. Bugs the hell out of me. I also would like to see more police actually stopping people than photo radar. I don't agree with photo radar. I think it's lazy. Lazy as shit. And I get the argument, well, they can get more cars by doing photo radar than if they're pulling people over one at a time. Fine. Have your photo radar, but there should be just as many police out there physically stopping people. Because if there's a presence out there, the problem with photo radar is that people know where it's situated. You can spot those vehicles from a mile away and say, okay, I'll just slow down. I'll slow down, sneak past them, and then I speed again. If you had more police actually out there stopping people, you'd have people who are speeding, but they see the cops and go, shit, that's the third cop I've seen in like 50 kilometers. I better slow the hell down. I'm going to get pulled. You need a presence. Photo's a tax grab. Yes, it is. In other countries, road work is done at night when there's no one on the road. That would probably make too much sense here. So they used to do that here in Calgary. So when they were extending Deerfoot Trail in the south end of town in the late 90s, early 2000s, they were building an overpass, but because of rush hour traffic, they'd build it at night. And it worked very well. And I agree with that. I think that they should do the same thing. Calgary has far too many photo radars. It's totally a tax grab. Absolutely. But the problem is this is where I've said it. I've said that when I run, I want a full audit of the Calgary Police Service. Any officers that I was just doing my job during the pandemic, out. Anybody who has caused anybody any kind of dissidence, get out. Because you were working to take orders from Jason Kenney and Dr. Dina Hinshaw. You weren't working to uphold the charter. We have a charter. If you're not here to uphold the charter, even if I come into that office and say, hey, you know what? I want you to go arrest this guy. I'm sick of his shit. Or follow me home on the train. I don't feel safe. They should say, no, that's not our job. We're here to uphold the charter, Mr. Mayor, not your personal requests. Unless somebody's breaking the law. I don't care if it's the police chief that's involved in this. Get him out too and get somebody in there that's willing to work, that's going to uphold the charter, that'll treat our citizens with respect. And when I say respect, I'm talking about holding the law, not just an easy ticket, not an easy arrest. I want real officers, real police, not this fake shit. I'm done with that. I'm done with the cash grabs. I'm done with all of it. It's all got to change. How about school zones that are assigned as playground zones, dropping speed in the evenings and weekends, especially when the school's grounds are surrounded by chain link fence? So the ones that are surrounded by a chain link fence, I agree. Those shouldn't be in effect. I really didn't like when the city extended them as a 2-for-1. That school zones are now included as playground zones and they're in effect all year round. I'm all for safety, but if there's a fence protecting the parks, there's still kids running, say, like on a sidewalk next to that fence, going to the park and things. So I do agree with limits during daylight hours. But come on, guys, after 7 p.m. or something, like, I'm all for safety. I always love it when they talk about things like we should reduce the speed limits in residential zones to 40. Why? Nobody follows them when they're 50. It's the speed limit isn't the problem. The problem is people driving like lunatics. It's and the other thing that I'm getting rid of right off the bat is this new parking shit in Calgary. You have to pay to park outside of your goddamn house soon. What is that? They're saying, well, you got to pay for parking passes if people come to visit so they can park outside your house. I pay my property taxes. I pay my goddamn taxes. People should be allowed to park outside of my house. I'm not giving you more money just to park at my own goddamn residence. That's horse shit. I mean, Justin keeps saying a tax grab. Of course it's a tax grab, but that's the problem with our current government and part of the reason that I'm running. These guys we want new stuff. Well, then let's keep taxing people. How many times has Justin Trudeau increased the carbon tax? Has the weather changed? No. Have we seen any benefit? No. Oh, I'm gonna give you some money back for your groceries. Kiss my ass. That doesn't do anything for anybody. That doesn't do anybody any good. giving us a grocery rebate, you're taking too much money. I hate to say it because there's people all the time that say, well, you get money back, you get rebates. If the government has money to give you back, it means they're taxing you too much. Anytime there's a surplus, they're taxing too much. And that is the stuff I want to put an end to in this town. If we don't use all the money we're taxing people from, we're not raising taxes the next year. And whatever money is left, we find a way to distribute it fairly or put it towards something that maybe we do like an online poll and have citizens vote for what they want us to do with that money. Improve some parks, build some playgrounds, or you know what I mean? Like have people do a vote and say, look, if we give the money back to people, people are going to get $10 each or something, or we can build a park or we can do some stuff. What do you as the citizens of the city want us to do with this money? I feel that's transparent. And as a result, we also say, oh, by the way, because we didn't use this money this year, we're not going to tax you more next year because we're taking too much, obviously. It's bullshit. You don't get things by taxing more. You can't say, well, I want, so just charge people more. People have the right to go to their jobs, earn their paycheck, which they're already deducted 30% of their earnings to go to the goddamn government. Then they come home and pay more tax on money they've already paid tax on. It's ridiculous. They should have the right to go to their jobs, earn their keep, come home, pay their bills, and have some money left over, whether they want to put it into savings, save up for a vacation, take their family out to a restaurant. People should be able to have some money in their bank accounts. And the problem with government in the last 15 years is they've started saying people shouldn't have anything left over when they're done. They should work, have multiple jobs, and have just enough to get by. Don't let them have any headway, because that's when the people start overtaking the rich, is when they have success too. So just keep your boot on their neck and tell them to keep working. That's not how I want to see things go. I want things to be affordable, prosperous, and also beneficial to the people who live here. If you're going to put in an honest day's work, you deserve to have money in your bank account. Plain and simple. I don't agree with the crap that goes on. When I was a teacher in a broken system, it was always stress to us to spend all the money so we could get more next year. I seen the same thing when I used to drive a tow truck for the Alberta Motor Association in my 20s. It was a great job, but I remember, and I've talked about it on another stream, at the time, Oakley sunglasses were like the big thing. And I remember they were ordering Oakley safety glasses. Now, the Alberta Motor Association is a member-driven service. The province does give them a handful of money for what they do, the way they're set up, but the majority of their money comes from member-driven services. So they said, well, we got to buy all these $600 Oakley sunglasses, these safety glasses for everybody on their trucks. And we sat in that staff meeting saying, why Oakleys? Well, because if we don't eat up the budget, we're not going to get the same budget next year. And people started raising their hands saying, well, why don't we just charge people less for memberships and we'll get more members? And the heads, like the guys in charge, turned around and said, don't ask those questions. We're not doing that. We're not doing that, because their bonuses were at risk if they do that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. I mean, $5 an hour in 1980, that was good money. Yeah, well, I remember I got my first job. There's a theme park near Calgary called Callaway Park. I got my first job there when I was 15. And I got fired because I abused my right. I abused my position. Look, when you work at a theme park and there's these snot-nosed kids that come around all day, I helped run the roller coaster. And the roller coaster there does two circuits, I guess you could say, 2 loops, 2 laps. And whenever you go through the first lap, you slow down the carts when they're going through and ask, is everybody good? Everybody wants to go again. They all scream, and you send them through on the second round. Well, I had a kid that was just being a shit. He kicked his mom in the leg when he was in line, and he was just being an ass. And he got onto the thing. He started spitting off the side, and he'd horked all over the side of the roller coaster. And they went around once, and the kid was screaming he wanted off, and I just pretended I didn't hear him. So I sent it for the second circuit. and then I gave them a third run when we're not supposed to do a third run ever. But I gave him a third run, and the kid was crying by the time he got off, and I was like, "Good," because don't think I was being a jerk. This kid was really asking for it. Okay, now and of course he went and screamed at his mom, and I got fired later. But I mean, it was near the end of summer, so I really don't care. But I digress. I was making like $6 an hour when I got that job, and that was in 1995, and I thought that was good money. I mean, I was going home with $400 every 2 weeks, and at that time, $400 did a lot. It's $400. I could. I mean, when I got my driver's license, I used to fill my car when I was 16. So 1996, gas I think was 52 cents a liter when I got my license. I remember it being 52 cents because I could fill my tank for $15. So $400 would last every 2 weeks. It was good money. It's I didn't read all of this. I just saw, can I ask your opinion? What's next for public inquiry? I missed the start. These public inquiries, it's hard to say. I don't know what's coming next, but the problem with these inquiries is they're not going to get any results. They're not going to get results. I don't know what the answer is to get results these days with anything, because the problem is that these politicians just keep skating over top of everything that's happening. And there's no accountability. Nobody's stepping down. Nobody's getting thrown in jail. People should be in jail for what they've done. So I don't know. I used to work at the Breadline Cafe in Mission for $5 an hour in 97. There you go. You seem to be a very authentic man. I appreciate your honesty. Well, that's why I think honesty is the best policy. And I'm told that sometimes, like we've had my good friend Keith Wilson on the channel, and he says, sometimes you're a little too honest with people. I said, but I got nothing to hide. I think that's good. I think honesty is the best policy. And I think it's refreshing, especially if I get into politics, to have that, to be able to say to people, look, this is where we are. I'm honest with my family. When we sit down at the table, whenever we have to talk about tightening our belts, or we talk about, hey, you guys can't behave this way. I had a tweet go out this week where I said, what's the best way to get nail polish out of a carpet? Or make a kid disappear and make it look like an accident, because my 2-year-old took my wife's purple nail polish, took the lid off of it, and dumped it all over our white carpet in our upstairs of our house. And I was up till 4:00 in the morning with baking soda, vinegar, and nail polish remover, and our carpet cleaner trying to get it out. Luckily, I've got, I think, about 80% of it, 90% of it out of the carpet. There's still a faint spot of purple residue on the carpet that's never going to come out. But for the most, I think compared to what it was, I fixed it. But anytime I've had to talk to my family about we can't do these things again, or we have to change the way we're doing things at home, or we have to tighten our belts, I'm honest with my kids. Anytime my kids have come and said, like my son wanted to play hockey last year, and we could afford to put him in hockey, but his interest wasn't where it needed to be to put him in for a whole season because of the price. So I was very honest with my son and said, look, if you want to go skating every day for the next 2 weeks, I'll put you in hockey because I'll see that you're committed, because it's very expensive. I was totally brutally honest with him. And during those 2 weeks, about 4 days in, he got fed up with it and decided he didn't want to go anymore. So all I said was maybe next year. And there's nothing wrong with honesty. There's nothing wrong with treating people the way you want to be treated. I think this world would be a far better place if more people did it. There's Rob. You just went through the TV incident. Yeah, my wife keeps saying that my kids are like the spawn of Satan, because my 2-year-old, 3-year-old now, he's 3 now. He's at that age. My oldest daughter, when she was that age, she got my wife's makeup all over our bed frame, which was like a suede. And we had to get that out. It's part of kids. The TV was a first for us. We've never had that happen before. But I have to also look at it and say part of the problem in this house, and when these things are happening, is the hectic nature of our household. The way a typical day goes in this house is that I'll wake up in the morning, get my kids fed and take them to school, and then I'm at home with a 3-year-old all day now. And he's one of those kids that if you turn your back on him for 10 seconds, like I can't even go to the bathroom without him turning something upside down. If you turn your back, you're in trouble. There's always going to be something that needs to be done because he's at that age. The biggest problem is that he has a 7-year-old brother who's ADHD. And while he's medicated, he doesn't think about the things he's doing or the consequences of those things when he's doing them. And as much as I cuss and get angry at these events and say, I can't believe my kids are doing these things. There's a Trace Atkins song. I'm not a big country guy, but I've heard it a million times. It's a song called You're Gonna Miss This. And I often think about that, there's going to come a day where my kids have kids and they're going to have remotes thrown through their TV. And they're going to come to me and say, Dad, what do I do? I can't afford a new TV. And I'm just going to laugh and say, how does it feel? Because I will miss it. I will miss those days. And I'm very grateful that I'm in the position I'm in where I get to work from home. I get to write my books. I get to do YouTube and essentially spend all these years with my children. And I'm grateful to each and every one of you that come out and spend time with our community, that watch those videos, that comment and share those videos out. People who have bought our merch. I don't know if you see, I'm wearing my new hoodie, and we've even got, if you haven't watched my videos, we have our new hats. I like the white one. I like the white hat. The black ones look good too. The black ones look the same as the hoodies. Go pick up some gear, guys, because I'm telling you, I was wearing this out at Sylvan Lake on the weekend, and people kept asking me, "What is that? What is that stuff?" I love the way it looks. So it's not so much a grift as, hey, if you want some good looking clothes, come be unacceptable with the rest of us. Show everybody how unacceptable you are. I know I've ordered some for Clyde. Clyde will soon be as unacceptable as I am when he gets out here in July, and I'm looking forward to that. But again, guys, I really appreciate everything you guys have done, everything you continue to do. I don't think there's a lot of YouTubers that get to a certain spot and they don't thank their communities. I know Clyde does, and that's one thing I respect with Clyde. But there's a lot of guys that, oh, look how many views I got, and look how many clicks and shares, and oh, it's been watched by this many people. You got to realize that you've got what you got because you've got a good community and you've got good people, and I think it's very important to often let people know that you're grounded and that you realize that without those people, you'd still be sitting in a corner doing nothing. So I'm very appreciative to each and every one of you who come out. That will wrap up tonight's stream because I do have to get videos out for you guys for this week. And boy, are we going to have some stuff to talk about. Stuff that we talked about tonight, but also stuff on the other end of the spectrum that we haven't talked about that I'm very much looking forward to bringing you guys this week. So keep your eyes open. Videos will be dropping every day from Monday to Thursday this week. And again, next Sunday, I might do a Saturday stream or a Monday stream next week because next Sunday, while it is Father's Day, I will be out. I'm meeting with Sarah Palin. And unfortunately, I won't be able to have her on the show because she's very busy. Maybe I'll talk to her about having her on the show afterwards when she's not busy to talk politics. But I'll be meeting with Sarah Palin over at Theo Fleury's Fire and Ice show over at the Grey Eagle in Calgary on Father's Day on Sunday. And there are still tickets available, guys. Theo's a good friend of the channel. He's a good friend of mine. If you're in Calgary and you want to see a good show, grab some tickets to go see Sarah Palin. It's going to be great. Theo really knows how to put on a good show with Jamie Soleil and Canadians for Truth. It's a bang up thing. I wish I could do as good a job as they do. But everybody, thank you for coming out. What CB said, buy my stuff. No, I'm kidding. Have a great night, guys. Stay safe. Stay cool this week because it's going to be a hot one by the looks of it. And I will catch you guys on the next one. Have a great evening, everybody. Thanks again.